While Americans are being laid off, evicted from their homes, struggling to provide food for their children and for themselves, Republicans insist that the best way forward is tax breaks for rich people. Well, let me see if I've got this straight. According to the Republicans, we create jobs in our economy by giving huge tax cuts to rich people. Rich people invest that money in the stock market. Stock market grows, makes lots more money for fund managers. Fund managers give huge sums of money to politicians in exchange for deregulation. Politicians hire media firms, campaign staff, and any other human commodities they desire. These new servants buy bigger houses, hire pool cleaners and lawn services, throw parties that require more servants, and before you know it, we're all working again. Well, I think I've got it figured out now. Republicans are the Rube Goldberg of job creation. We could have simply given all that bailout money to the Americans who needed it so they could pay their mortgages and feed and clothe their families and educate their children. But that would have been too easy, too direct. Republicans think it's much more fun to feed that money in at the top, like a ball bearing on a circuitous track aimed at a line of dominoes. Is there one place that money certainly would not have gone if given back to the Americans who actually earned it? You bet. Political contributions. I am definitely starting to see a pattern here. And I was wrong. Rube Goldberg would have sent that ball bearing on a wild ride, triggering delightful surprises and inspiring ingenuity along the way. The Republican ball bearing drops in at the top, and it exits at the top. The fun part for them is taking the ball bearing away from us. Evidently, we don't play with it right. That money in the hands of poor and middle-class Americans would have stimulated the economy immediately, and it would have saved many of our neighbors from the tragic chain of events that follow foreclosure. It's hard to keep a job when you sleep in a car. It's hard to find a place to live, feed your children, or make your car payment when you lose your job. Before long, you slip below the poverty line beyond anyone's help. All you needed was a little more time to catch up, a little consideration from your banker, just a little understanding from your neighbors, your community, your country. But now the situation requires more attention than anyone is willing or able to give, and the middle class declines and the ranks of the poor grow larger because instead of helping our neighbors, our countrymen, we turned away and gave all our good help to the people least likely to help anyone but themselves. We gave all our available resources to the very people who have consistently used their power, influence, and wealth to enrich themselves while doing us harm. We're asked to believe that we can trust the very people who took our jobs overseas, perverted our laws to their own advantage, and who treat us all like economic slaves. We gave them the most favorable environment for success ever to exist in this country. And what did they do with it? They took the very best we had to give and left us only the neglected crumbs of their gluttonous indulgence. Republican tax breaks? Those are the gluttons returning for their crumbs. Okay, so they got what they wanted, again, and the tax cuts were extended. Now they can focus on jobs for the rest of us like they promised, right? Wrong. They've got social engineering to do. First on the list is the destruction of women's rights. We were promised jobs. Nothing the Republicans have done since taking the House of Representatives has anything to do with jobs. They immediately began implementing their anti-freedom agenda and introduced several bills intended to restrict a woman's freedom, particularly where it concerns her health. They voted to defund Planned Parenthood, which is, for many women, the only health care they can afford. Planned Parenthood, contrary to Republican propaganda, is in the business of preventing abortions by delivering quality health care and contraception to the most vulnerable women in our society. Republicans have also presented a bill that would actually allow a public hospital to refuse emergency abortion procedures even to save a woman's life. Refuse to save a woman's life. I don't see any jobs in that deal. This is not the leadership we were promised. This is not a path to economic recovery. This is a damp, dark alley where evil men scurry and scratch for errant scraps of influence to feed their diseased ambitions. They rummage through the garbage where insurance men dump the ruined remains of our healthcare system. They snicker among themselves at the plight of the poor and the disabled, the war-torn and the helpless. They promote and foster a contempt for compassion and charity that they disguise as leadership. But leadership, it is not. No economic recovery will seep from this dumpster. No jobs will crawl from this sewer. Fear is their only strength, and fear will not inspire innovation or promote health or increase our knowledge. It will only keep the light from illuminating this dark alley. We need the light. We need ideas. We need the freedom to make mistakes and learn. Republicans only promote what they know will work, not for us, but for themselves. And they continue to pass laws that prevent us from doing anything differently. If we are free only to do those things that Republicans believe is right, then we are not free at all. We are imprisoned within the cowardice of the status quo, and even our protestations become captive. We are, in fact, subjected to a very short list of options and a very long list of rules. Of course, if you're wealthy, these rules don't apply to you. We have another list, a much shorter list of rules for you, and a much longer list of options. Wealth really opens up those doors, doesn't it? Our country needs inspiration. It must find the courage to strike out in new directions. If we don't reject the Republican fear-mongering that prevents innovation, we cannot last much longer. We can't progress without progressive thought, progressive ideas, progressive citizens. We've allowed conservative thought to strip from us the idea that we are citizens working together for the betterment of all, and they've replaced it with the idea that we are consumers. Nothing infuriates me more than being called a consumer. As though my reason for existence is only to gorge myself on the gruel big business slops in the trough. Well, as long as we continue feeding at that trough, our economy goes nowhere for us. The elite don't mind that fact. They're sucking the last of our resources now, and when they're done, they'll go on to greener pastures like China, leaving behind a demoralized people and the smoking wreckage of a once great country. I'm taking bets that the Tea Partiers left behind will blame us progressives for the disaster, given their apparent inability to learn. Here's a news flash for those of you with very short memories. Our economy works best under Democrats. I know. I couldn't believe it either. But here's why. Republicans have worldwide ambitions that cause them to take our money and spend it all over the world to prop up dictators, wage war over oil, endear themselves to powerful interests abroad, and generally advance their control beyond our borders. Our economy's in a shambles because they've sucked every dollar out of it to fund their global agenda. Democrats, on the other hand, spend our tax dollars providing health care for the poor, building roads and bridges, inspecting food and regulating its production, enacting and enforcing financial laws that prevent the wealthy from destroying, as they are obviously prone to do, the opportunities that this country promises. They invest in new technologies, science, and education. They understand the value of our environment, and they spend money to keep it clean and fertile for future generations. Democrats work to maintain the safety net of our society and generally honor our social contract. All that money spent to promote the general welfare as required by the Constitution stays right here in our economy for our benefit. What Democrats don't do well is wield power. If they did, maybe they could have stopped the Republican juggernaut before it rose to such prominence. More likely, though, the ability to wield power would corrupt the Democrats just as completely as it has the Republicans. It's not just an old saying. Power really does corrupt. If we Americans don't pull our heads out of our asses long enough to see the Republicans for what they really are, they will obtain absolute power. And we all know what that means. To those of you who voted for Republicans in the last election in spite of the previous 10 years of lies, theft, and murder, I'd really like to know, You like being lied to every time they need your vote? Have you no respect for what is true? Is there no place in your philosophy for learning new, better ways of living together? Must we make the same mistakes over and over again? And finally, do you think that Reuben Lucius Goldberg would be proud of us now?